NECA saves the day with the savior of the universe. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Defenders of the Earth, Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon is the legendary swashbuckler of space travel. This intergalactic adventurer is known throughout the galaxy as the one man to battle the evil Ming and come out the hero. Flash alone understands the twisted mind of this wicked tyrant and leads the Defenders' war against him to save Earth from extinction. Before we spend some time with this space swashbuckler, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the Defenders of the Earth Flash Gordon stands by taking the trusty tape measure of mine and going to put it right to the very top of his head. That seems like the best place, doesn't it? You guys are all very smart viewers. While I'm doing this, though, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provide the sample of Defenders of the Earth Flash Gordon that we could have a look at in this review. The figure of Flash Gordon stands 7.3 inches in height. We can switch that quickly over to centimeters, revealing that Defenders of the Earth Flash Gordon stands 18.6 centimeters tall. Shall we have a look at the accessories that come included with Flash Gordon? Thank you. Thank you for the majority of the room saying yes. Starting first, he comes included with what I would consider to be a futuristic laser blaster. Although all the efforts made by these creators of TV shows and film at that time to come up with what they would consider to be futuristic weapons all ultimately look like they're made out of things that you'd find around the house. Still, despite that, though, I think that this is a really nice little laser pistol that may go pew, 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 firing at Ming and the rest of his army. I sadly have to report one little problem. Unfortunately, my nozzle on the end of my blaster did break off. Trying to free it from its plastic prison, containing both it and the rest of the accessories and Flash himself, somehow I ended up breaking off the little end nozzle, so I had to glue that in place. Sorry about that. What I will say, though, reporting in that that's a nice-looking pistol. Whether it goes pew-pew-pew or not, it does have some rather nice metallic-looking purple paint. I feel like I've seen this purple paint before, perhaps, maybe with the Lost Predator. I'm sure they probably use these paints from other figures. I can't imagine that they just invent this specifically and solely for Flash Gordon. But like I said, it's a nice-looking laser pistol. One thing that's cool that comes included with the pistol is it does have a couple of blast effects. Two sizes, actually, although one size fits all, certainly when it comes to the hole that attaches to the end of the nozzle. You just take one of them and just, like I said, plug that in place. It's made of a translucent blue plastic. I know I'm stating all the obvious things. But there's a little short version of that, and then there is a longer version of that, which basically replicates the same shape on the end, although the points are a little bit longer, but certainly has a much longer beam. Much longer for the more pew-pew-pews. Go ahead and just remove this off and replace it the exact same way. It's just fitting that hole onto the end of the nozzle. And just sits on like this, like that. This does add a little bit extra weight to this specific one, simply just because it's stretching a little bit further out in that clear plastic. But it certainly does add a little bit of extra pizzazz when it certainly comes to displaying these figures for yourself. So he comes included with that. He also comes included with a space sword. I'm sure I don't have to add space to the front of every single weapon that we're looking at, but I mean, he uses it in space, so why don't we just go ahead and say that. It is made of a translucent yellow plastic. Not all of it's yellow plastic, obviously. I know I'm, again, stating the obvious. The hilt has been rather nicely painted. I'm guessing probably starting first. I can't think that all of this is molded yellow plastic. It could potentially be. Maybe what they just did was slide the yellow plastic into the hilted area, or the other possibility is that they've used all clear, that translucent yellow plastic, and they simply just painted the hilt in the silver, the black, and little nods, little notations there in red. Very, very nice looking sword. And then, of course, it comes with a couple of swappable hands as well. I have to kind of be honest with all of you that I did swap out the hands that currently are in the forearms of Flash Gordon. I already took those all out. One thing I do actually want to report, I'm doing a lot of reporting in this, is we're going to look at basically just the stock fists for the time being. I know, it's not the most exciting things to look at. But unfortunately, I do want to report that they have used red plastic. Maybe not for all the hands, although it would make some sense that they probably would have molded the whole hand in the same red plastic and then just painted the fists. But unfortunately, because they've painted this flesh tone over top of the red, as you're moving the pegs initially, getting it out of the packaging, all this paint is going to flake right off. It's unavoidable. It's just something that's going to happen. It doesn't really bother me too much, but it is something that's going to flake off. You can already see it. Well, you can see still part of it remaining behind on this fist right here. Flash Gordon also comes included with another gripping hand, which, as you can see, I have yet to put into the socket. This one, as you can see, as I'm moving it back and forth, the flesh-colored paint is going to start flaking off the red plastic underneath. It's just one of those unavoidable cases. I suppose they could always have just used a flesh-colored plastic. Probably would have been a lot easier, and then masked the cracking of the paint that they put over top of it. But that's the route that they ended up going. One thing, though, is as I've swapped already the hands into Flash Gordon's forearms, the little bit that is still visible is very small. This is the only area that's going to be affected, and it's really more so the more times that you're bending the hand back and forth, the more times that paint's going to flake off. I think more so I'm going to be the type that's probably going to be rotating the hand more than anything else, that I don't think I'm going to come across as much issue. See, there is a little bit of the red paint right there. Again, could they have used a flesh-colored peg? They probably could have, but they went with a red peg instead. Probably just wanted to keep the same molding, the same mold plastic that they use for the rest of the figure. By the way, though, if I want to show you guys how the weapons look in his hand, I can go ahead and slide the saber into the one hand like that. Seems a little strange, I'm sure, to have him wielding both weapons. Firing pew 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 and then having the sword in the other hand seems a little unnecessary, but we're going to go ahead and do that anyways. Slide as you can see, the pistol fits rather nicely around those 4 fingers, and then the thumb holds the back of the handle like that. And I guess we can finish off the rest of the touches by adding the blast effect right to the very end of the nozzle. Flash Gordon is ready to go. Although I would have to question whether he'd be able to do both things. Swinging the sword and shooting his pistol, it's very unlikely. Anyways, let's go ahead and remove these from his hands. Put those to the side. Remove this very carefully because I don't want to drop that onto the floor. And very carefully removing the pistol from his hand. Putting that to the side. Getting now a closer look at Flash Gordon. I must say I do like this figure, and I think one thing that works well to this figure's aid is the fact that it does have some rather nice paintwork. You can see specifically just the face alone, how nice that head sculpt is with that paint that's been applied over top of it. It does have, of course, as you would expect, a more cartoon look to it. So if you're expecting realism coming from these defenders of the earth, defenders of the earth, we have to keep pluralizing defenders, then you're probably not going to be too happy because, of course, these are going to be a lot more cartoon-centric. I think the blonde is rather nicely applied on the back of his hair there. Going more a dark gold on the front, but then as it gets a little bit further to the back, it gets that lighter coloring of blonde. And that looks really nice. Yeah, I'm overall really happy with his head sculpt. It could actually be a quite serviceable-looking Superman if you would imagine that they would have colored the eyebrows black and, of course, following the same suit with his hair. I think that could pull off a rather nice-looking Superman. I like that little bit of reflection also in the corners of his eyes. Very, very nice. When we look at certainly the rest of the body, I think the rest of the body is using that red plastic I talked about before. It certainly doesn't just stop at that red plastic. They've airbrushed rather nicely some dark shadowing onto the body. So it adds a little bit of extra necessary depth to this. Now, while I'm certainly spinning this figure around, I'm trying to think in the back of my mind, what could they use this mold for something else? Could they have used this mold for something else? Maybe they have used it for a character like Superman. It certainly would make some sense. I mean, that's a very muscular-looking character. A big build like this would work really well for a Superman. And I know we have already gotten that one Superman release that came included with it was an alien xenomorph, if memory serves me correctly. Wouldn't be surprised if, again, they didn't use this body build for that Superman that we got before. Of course, different molding is incorporated here to the shoulders, if that be the case. You have the shoulder supports there, the shoulder pads on the one side, and it also carries over to the other side as well, really nicely painted there in that gold, with a trim nicely painted outlining that in a lighter gold. He has that same color scheme working away across the top of the shoulders. Again, I know I'm stating the obvious, and you got some nice gold there along top area of his collar, with one notable snap, little button there on the front. Yeah, I really think that the paint on this is quite good. Even the ends of his sleeves, you can see how they start rather dark, this dark burgundy color, and transition rather nicely into the lighter coloring of that red here. I think that's nice. As for his belt, of course, we've got the little lightning bolt there on the front. That's pretty nicely painted, I have to say. The fact that they would take the time to outline that yellow circle with a darker shadow to it is a little bit of extra richness. Gives you a little bit of extra depth going on there. I have heard some issues with these figures having QC issues. Short of the blaster, honestly, short of the blaster that broke really by me just removing it from the plastic tray, I really haven't had any issues, knock on wood, so far with Flash Gordon. Certainly when it goes to his articulation, we'll have a look at that right now. His head rotates all the way around. It hinges down, up, and of course all the things that would go along with a ball joint. As for the shoulders hinge out, but because he's got this extra sculpting happening right here, it does limit then how far up the arms you can actually bring them up. You can actually more so just bring them at a 45. Anything past that point, it really seems like there's a lot of friction happening, working against you. I guess I could probably force that a little bit more, but it certainly seems like it wants to stop short at 45 degrees. Then you can, of course, bring the arms forward and back. He does have a swivel at the bicep, double hinge on the elbows, and then the hands themselves, which I know we already talked about the paint flaking off, but the hands rotate all the way around and hinging back and forth. I guess really, when it boils down to it, the only part I really would have fixed to this figure is the fact that they would have used a flesh tone peg as opposed to using the red plastic, just because you can, well, yeah, you can't see it here on this side. This side's not as much, just probably because I haven't moved the hand as much on this hand, but certainly this hand right here, you can see more of that red peg. Anyways, he does have the upper torso crunch. It's a little tight on this figure, but again, I'd rather a tight joint on the figure than a loose joint. Moves back and forth, nice crunch going on there. He has a swivel joint back and forth. Legs split out on a ball hinge joint, ball peg joint. And you can bring the legs forward and back. He does have a double hinge on the knee. Both sides as well, just in case you want to see both sides. I don't know why you would want to see both sides, but just in case. He does have a swivel on the boot. Let's talk a little bit about these boots here for a second. Not only are they rather nicely painted, but unfortunately they fall into that same category as the wrists. They're using red plastic, and it stands out certainly a little bit more here when you're looking at the boot. Probably they could have gone in there, just used the black molding, the black peg, instead of using the red plastic. But unfortunately, because they used a red peg, it's a little bit more noticeable the more times you're moving these feet back and forth. Has a swivel back and forth also on the ankles, and he does have toe articulation. And in case, yes, you are curious, Flash Gordon does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. So it seems to be something I want to point out to you guys. But he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. So if you want to make use of a display stand, though really, to be honest, Flash Gordon doesn't have any real difficulty standing, you can certainly make use of a display stand. If you want to get him in, I guess, some more action poses. Certainly for a character, the leader, I suppose, of Defenders of the Earth, you would want to put him in some just more interesting action pose than simply just having him standing here like I've got currently going on right now. Not a bad looking Flash Gordon from the Defenders of the Earth line, making sure, of course, I pluralized Defenders and not pluralized Earth. As I can see in front of me, there are 5 Defenders, and I know there's only 1 Earth. Although you talk to that O'Connell guy, he'll tell you for the last several years he's been jumping in and out of parallel universes and alternate realities. But it's also the same guy, let me just state this as well, that would tell you he was able to fly using aerosol spray cans. Screw you, Jerry O'Connell. Screw you. But Flash Gordon does have some nice paint applications. Majority on the figure is all this red plastic, and yet the airbrushing of the darker burgundy over top it does give a lot of extra depth to that sculpt. Speaking of the sculpt, I do like the head sculpt as well. Good paint also with the gold and that jet black in his belt and his boots. And you know, speaking of that black, if you had that black carried over to his head, specifically in his hair and specifically in those eyebrows of his, he'd pull off a rather nice looking Superman as well. Although I don't think NECA Toys has the licensing for Superman anymore. He does have some pretty good looking accessories. One space blaster that goes pew pew pew, and he also has a space sword. Why do I have to throw space in front of everything? He does have a couple of also blast effects, firing effects that can be attached to the blaster pistol. And short of the fact that, unfortunately, I did break off the nozzle of the pistol. It was just me removing it from its plastic prison. I didn't think I was doing any harm to it. Unfortunately, it broke right off. I had to glue it in place. But that really only represents the only problem I've had with this figure. Have heard some people say that there was QC issues with their figure, with joints breaking, and I haven't had any of those issues, knock on wood. The only thing I would say, talking about its joints, is because they did use the red plastic and made up the majority of his body in his ankles and his wrists as well, that unfortunately the moment you start moving his wrists and you start moving his ankles, unfortunately the paint's going to flake away, and what you're going to see behind, it's not Jerry O'Connell, screw you Jerry O'Connell, you're also going to see that red plastic sticking out. So I wish they could have used a black plastic for the peg in its ankles, and then maybe used a flesh-colored plastic for the peg that's in his wrist. Other than that, though, it's a nice-looking figure. What do you guys think of Flash Gordon? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that provide the sample of Defenders of the Earth Flash Gordon that we could have a look at in this review. If you guys are new to this channel and enjoying all the content, love the fact that I just name-dropped my secret identity. Anybody remember my secret identity? Used aerosol spray cans to fly around in the sky. It's ridiculous. Jerry O'Connell, you suck. But if you are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, that you turn the bell notification on. And yes, you come back to this channel regularly, because we are also going to be looking at some more Defenders of the Earth, and we are also going to be looking at some more NECA stuff. Lots of stuff to have your intergalactic peepers peeled about. So thanks for watching. See you guys next time.